I am so glad you convinced me that the family car should be the Defender 110. It is so beautiful inside. It's so comfortable, and it just feels indestructible.
Yes, it really is. I've been waiting a long time for the new model to come out. The Defender 110, I'm telling you, it's my favorite car of all times. It's my third one. You know, I have stories of going off-road. The guy managed the group. He was like, what are you doing in this beautiful car? I'm like, I'm going off-road. He's like, are you sure? Because you can use one of ours. And then they look like Mad Max cars. I'm like, no, we're going to do this. And he was shocked.
Wow. Well, it's great because the Defender has been reimagined for 21st century adventure, and its unparalleled off-road ability, as well as its robust interior, are invaluable whether you're headed towards uncharted territory or just a weekend of exploration. The Defender 110 tackles challenging surroundings with absolute confidence. The SUV conveys strength outside and in, featuring peerless technology like an intuitive driver display and an award-winning infotainment system. That's my favorite part, to keep you connected no matter where the journey takes you. Adventure is unique to everyone, and so is the Defender. Choose from the two-door Defender 90, the four-door Defender 110, or the larger Defender 130 with the ability to seat up to 8 passengers. You'll find uncompromising performance in all three. So pack up and go even further with the Defender 110. Learn more at LandRoverUSA.com/Defender.
These days, we're all investors, trying to be smart with our money despite our worst impulses. But at iShares, we believe that deep down inside of every investor is a better investor. One that's just waiting to be let out. Explore iShares ETFs and insights and let your best investor out. Visit iShares.com for more information.
This isn't your average business podcast, and he's not your average host. This is the James Altucher Show on the Stansberry Radio Network.
This is James Altucher at the James Altucher Show, and I'm also here with my co-host for today, Claudia Altucher. And Claudia, I'm very excited about today's guest.
I am too. Tell us why, James, because I can't believe that you finally got this guest. I'm so excited.
It's one of my favorite TV shows. It's The Prophet on CNBC, and the star of The Prophet is Marcus Lemonis. So he's the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company called Camping World. They're in the RV business. And what he does is, it's almost like CNBC's version of Shark Tank, but not quite. What he does is, and we've watched every episode, which is why I wanted you to be co-host of this. He walks into every... He gets 40,000... He's gotten 40,000 requests for help from different companies that are in trouble. He's picked out, let's say, a couple of dozen. He goes into a company... He writes them a check on the spot to invest in the company. He works out a deal on just a handshake. And then you see him. He's down there cleaning the walls, painting things, moving shelves around.
Bathrooms, doing whatever needs to be done.
On the Eco-Me show, he was cleaning the bathrooms. By the way, it's interesting to see what he says about it in the episode we just did right now. But he gets down there and he has a philosophy where he's going to help them out. A company can be helped by either improving the people, and so that might mean helping an owner become a better, business manager, or getting rid of bad employees, or dealing with the egos of the managers, or whatever. Or the other thing he does is process. So looking at how the products are made, and maybe that could be done more efficiently.
I remember one show where the bottles were being bottled one per every 2 minutes or so, and he could get it down to like one every second.
Yeah, so he invested in the equipment to make the process more efficient and ultimately cheaper for him in the long run. And then he has 3 P's: people, process, product. So ultimately he tries to improve the product. So for instance, in the key lime pie case, they were using artificial ingredients. He had them improve the product by using organic ingredients, using a special recipe, and so on.
But what's interesting is to see the skin in the game that the business owners have, and how much of them personally is involved, whereas a little change that would seem very, very simple is very hard for them to do.
Yeah, for instance, like when he changed Athens Motors to Auto Match USA, the guy's name was Athens, and he a lot of the times the egos get in the way, and that's where Marcus is particularly good, I think, at going into a company and figuring out what all the egos are and how to work with them. And he's firm, but he has kind of a compassionate way
has
of
a very soft, nice touch, very human, he's amazing with the people who are ready to understand. He also cuts losses when there is someone that you just know is not good for the business.
Yeah, which is really interesting because you don't see that on a lot of business shows. Like you would almost expect every single show, oh, he turns this business into a fantastic multi-billion-dollar business. Some businesses actually, it doesn't work out for him afterwards, and he talks about that on the episode you're about to listen to. But the season 3 is launching, I think, on the day we're going to release this podcast. So I encourage everyone to listen to this episode, see how he does the show, and then watch the show.
We're definitely going to be watching.
Because I know for our kids, we have them watch the show just for educational purposes, just to see how this guy deals with people, deals with process, deals with product to improve a business is very valuable information. It's like these 2 seasons that he's done so far, and now this is the beginning of the 3rd season. This has been almost like an MBA for me, and I've been involved in probably 50 businesses.
They take a long time to shoot, too, because it's just the process of what happens in the show, and then, these things don't happen overnight. I mean, sometimes you have to wait to see if a process works.
Well, and it's interesting to see how he describes some of the follow-ups in the podcast that occur. So without any further ado,
Marcus Lemonis.
Marcus Lemonis, thank you.
Hey, James, how are you?
Good. Thanks for agreeing to do this call on this podcast. I really appreciate it.
Of course.
So, are you excited for the upcoming new season?
I am, but I'm trying to balance that with everything else going on in my life. It's, we're in the middle of still shooting the show, and the business that I bought about a month ago, Crumbs, reopens Tuesday as well, and so it's a little intense right now.
So let me just tell you, Crumbs changed my life. Like, I lived on Wall Street, and there was a Crumbs right around the corner. My wife and I would go there every single day. I probably gained 20 pounds, but it was like an innovation in cupcake technology.
Yeah.
Why did they go out of business?
I think a number of reasons, to be honest with you. One is they really got too singularly focused. While a cake's a great thing, in order for a business to make it under a real fixed cost structure, you need to have high repetition of visits, right? You need high frequency. And so a traditional bake shop will have more than just a singular item. It can have an iconic kind of marquee item, but you can't just make it on that. And so I think at the end of the day, what we've done is we've really changed up the menu. We've stuck with our core item, but we've built an infrastructure that allows for breakfast items and lunch items. And, we have a new product called the Baisant, which is a combination of a bagel and a croissant. And you just have to have more because not everybody likes cupcakes. You got to realize that.
I like the bagel croissant idea. I'm gonna try that out. You're opening up Tuesday. I'm gonna try it.
We open in the Garment District. First one is in the Garment District.
And this is not part of the Profit TV show, right? This is just on your own. You're doing this.
It's kind of funny. The lines are very blurry. My real life and my TV life are kind of the same. It's not going to be featured as an episode, but the process to do the deal was pretty similar. So no, it's not part of the show.
Well, okay, let's talk about that because on the show you talk about the 3 Ps.
Right.
So people, process, product. And with every single business, it's amazing. And this is where I think every entrepreneur and business owner and even employee and even my kids, they start watching your show and they start thinking to themselves, what's Marcus going to look at the people? What's he going to do with the process? What's he going to do with the product? So what did you do here with Crumbs and I promise I'll relate this back to the show, but was it a people thing? Was it a process thing? What was going on?
Well, it's always a people thing for me because ultimately people make the decisions that either make the business or they break the business. And so in this instance, you had a company that was really riddled with super high overhead a corporate office in New York City with a $25,000 rent factor, an executive chef that's making $150,000 a year, and layers of management. Well, that all really boils down to people. One individual thought it was a good idea to do that, and they layered the company into really a cost structure that it couldn't afford. Additionally, when it came down to the product, in my opinion, it became too one-dimensional. There just really wasn't enough of an offering to allow customers to come back on a more repetitive basis. And you needed to have things that were unique. And so whether it's the crumb nut or this new product, the Baisant, or ice cream with cupcakes inside of it, there are multiple products that really are going to serve multiple people.
Okay, but
as it relates, yeah.
Oh, I just want to contrast that though with the key lime pie business that you bought you invested in. You focused them in on one product. You got rid of all the other products.
I did. I got rid of all their box products that they didn't make, and so there's two kind of steps to that. Number one, I had them get rid of everything that wasn't really authentic to the business. They were out basically buying boxed cookies and boxed candy and things that basically came from a factory as opposed to fresh made. Number two, Crumbs, Key West, Key Lime Pie episode, it's kind of ironic because I had this in the works, but it wasn't done in time. That's actually transitioning to Crumbs of Key West. And so while pies will be the marquee product there'll be a lot more there than just pies.
Well, what's interesting is, and I've noticed this throughout the two seasons, is you're very good at taking these businesses and seeing if they work with other businesses that you either partner with or own. So, for instance, take Mr. Green Tea from the first season. I understand you're doing something with them in Crumbs.
So we're mass marketing a pint of ice cream across the country. They're going to be making, in this new factory that I built for them, 3 flavors: a red velvet, a key lime ice cream, ironically enough, 4 flavors actually, a double fudge chocolate, and an apple crumble kind of product. And so it'll all be branded Crumbs ice cream, but they're the manufacturer for it, and they'll obviously reap the benefits of it.
And I also like with EcoMe, you were bringing them into the Camping World stores. So you've had this opportunity to leverage this enormous platform you have with, you're the CEO and chairman of Camping World. You've leveraged this enormous platform to work partnerships out with some of the companies that you invest in. Do you know that in advance, before you invest in a company, that you're going to potentially work out these partnerships? Does that help your decision making?
I really decide that I like a space, an industry, and I decide to really go after it and look for things that I can parlay on top of them. Crumbs was, no pun intended, kind of the icing on the cake. It really gave me the ability to leverage a brand and find distribution and use the other businesses, and whether that was Sweet Pete's Candy or the Key Lime Pie, which will be sold at all the Crumbs, or developing ice cream is one thing. When you look at the season that's about to start next Tuesday, the first episode is a clothing company. And so that should give people a little bit of insight that I'm going to go heavy into the clothing industry now, and whether that's women's apparel or whether that's men's accessories. I'm going to start to build kind of a stacked empire on clothing and accessories and things that kind of allow for that. I may end up doing a product next year and in another season that is a singular product, but I can now use this new business that I bought as a form of distribution. And so there's always a bit of a method to it, but I have to be honest, it doesn't always work out. I sometimes chase something and it doesn't pan out, and that's part of doing business.
Sure, that's part of investing. Although it does seem that you have a very simple mental model that you use when you walk into a business. You're going to look at the people, process, product, and by looking at that, I like how you. So with the people, it's very interesting because sometimes you'll be very harsh, like, okay, these people are not necessary, these people need to improve, but you then taper that a little bit, or temper that with, you kind of have a gentle touch with them as well. Like, how's your process there when you're dealing with people?
Well, you try to be yourself. I mean, that's really, for me, all my life, it's worked. even people that I've had to let go of in the past, I still maintain a relationship with, because there's a difference between being very forceful and very matter of fact and very assertive, but being compassionate and being a good listener and being understanding. And you can, in my opinion, you can be sympathetic and you can be compassionate while delivering a very tough message. Sometimes people don't listen, and you have to be a little more direct, or sometimes people mislead you, or they're dishonest, or they lie, and the directness turns into, it turns into frustration and anger. And I'm not always a cool customer. Sometimes I get upset.
Well, it's interesting though. Like many people who want to buy businesses, they often think, okay, I want to buy a laundromat, and they buy the best laundromat in the city, and then they're stuck because it's harder to improve. What I've noticed in your businesses that you've invested in, and there's about 14 at least from the first 2 seasons, is that you're definitely using kind of the 3 Ds. Like someone died, or there was a too much debt, or there was a divorce, or there was some reason why this business is no longer working. Which ultimately is another mental model, but it fits your mental model of saying, okay, something's gone wrong, and now I have this opportunity because there's something to fix. And it's usually the people that have gone wrong.
And if you added another D to it, it's delay. And so not every business that I work on is totally broken for financial reasons. Sometimes they're broken because they have analysis paralysis, where they move too slow and they can't make decisions, or they've reached a level of success and they just can't go any higher because they are scared to think out of the box, or they're scared to take a chance. And, if you look at businesses that aren't successful, it isn't always about money. It isn't always about process. It isn't always about the product. It's always 100% of the time about people. And whether they're unwilling to take a chance, or they're unwilling to make a hard decision, or they're unwilling to make the changes necessary, it really boils down to the person, the people's ability to change their process or change their product. And it sounds simple, but I have to be honest, James, it is as simple as it sounds. You could look at any business that way, and I have a lot of really young fans, like 11, 12, 13-year-olders who write notes, and they're like, this is so much easier when I think about it this way.
It's really true. My 12-year-old is your biggest fan.
That's awesome.
So
awesome.
But it's really true. Like this analysis paralysis, like season 1, the first episode, Car Cash, though the 2 brothers really couldn't make decisions together.
They couldn't. And you know what I think happened to them, candidly, is that they lost their father, who really was the driving force in that situation. Their father had not really mentored them or coached them on how to run a business. He unexpectedly passes away, and these 2 kids who can't get along as well with each other are now tasked with running a multi-million-dollar business. They don't know what to do. And so it really not only puts the business in peril, but it further constrains their relationship. It makes it very tough.
And again, that's also what creates the opportunity for you. Otherwise, they would have just been running their business profitably.
Yeah. You know what? I think for me, I did an interview in Inc. magazine in the month of October, and I spent a lot of time talking about, you could talk a lot about business and numbers and formulas, which is kind of boring, to be honest with you. What's really interesting what's really interesting in it for me is, what is it that makes people tick? What motivates them? And one of the worst things that somebody could tell me in business is that what motivates them is just, I want to be a millionaire. I want to have a big house. I want to have a big boat. I want to have a big car. What I'm looking for people to tell me is that they have a passion for it. They love employing people. They love talking to customers. And if you do all those things and you do them right, the making money is going to become a byproduct of it. And it shouldn't be your sole motivation. If it is, and you make decisions solely on money, then you're going to be letting good employees go during the downturn. You're going to be, cheating customers out of situations. I want you to be focused on money, and I want you to operate at the highest level of performance. But I also want you to remember that there's a human side to business, both on the employee and the customer side.
So let's take as an example, though, and I'll play slight devil's advocate. Season 2, episode 3, Michael Cena's Profit. This is a guy who had a very particular passion about his style of how people should train. And you made it a much more you basically took advantage of the square footage, built out the square footage and made it a much more general physical training gym.
Well, what I didn't do, James, let's just clarify this. I didn't get rid of his core training product. I reallocated the space so that he could still do that, but I wanted to add other things like yoga and spin and those kinds of things. And so it was really saying to him, look, much like Crumbs, you can't be one-dimensional. You can't do it. And so what difference Profit is actually the closest correlation to Crumbs as I could think of. You had one product. It was very one-dimensional. It had a fixed cost structure. And if you didn't want that, you couldn't go there. And so if you didn't want a cupcake, you wouldn't go to Crumbs. If you didn't want, if you wanted to go spinning, you couldn't go to Profit. If you wanted to buy a bagel, you couldn't go to Crumbs. And so at the end of the day, what bothered me about Michael was his passion to be one-dimensional. I didn't change his workout. I just changed the way we use the space.
I see. So you built out a bigger space essentially, and you made more effective use per square foot by taking unused space and putting a treadmill there.
And by the way, now his spin studio packed for every class. His yoga studio sold out for every class. And so, yes, it was a cataclysmic paradigm shift for him. Huge. I mean, you saw him. He didn't want to change about anything. He'll tell you.
You brought him to tears, Marcus.
What's that?
You brought him to tears.
I know, but it's hard. You have to really break people down at their core, and you have to get inside of them. And what I really realized about Michael was that it was his pride that didn't want to change. It wasn't the business logic. It was his pride.
Well, and similar with Athens Motors, the guy did not want to change the name.
Right.
But you were very firm on like this has to be, more acceptable to the mass public.
Well, look at this. I mean, in the case of Athens Motors, you have Pete Athens was the guy's name. He puts his name on the building. And I like businesses that I could scale. I now have 6 auto matches open across the country. In fact, the next one, the newest one, has its grand opening in Fort Myers, Florida on Monday. Athens Motors, while great as a local brand, doesn't translate nationally. It just doesn't. And so I think what Pete had to realize was it wasn't just about that location. It was about building a big, big business. You think about Car Cash. It had a very kind of transferable and scalable name. There's now Car Cashes all over the country. It's not like it was John and Andrew's car buying service. You just have to make it a little bit more relatable to people. And when you personalize it, sometimes it doesn't work.
The Car Cash one was very interesting because it took me a while to figure out what the actual deal was. And I think you were still probably trying to figure out the structure of the show. But you essentially bought 100% of the business and then licensed back to them whatever locations they would open up while you would also open up locations.
You got it. That was exactly the deal. And I don't think I was as clear back then because, it was a little bit new. I was doing deals in my normal fashion. And one of the things that I've learned on the show is that I have to be far more deliberate and I have to be far more clear about what the transaction is because I move fast and my mind moves fast. And it's been a great exercise for me to learn to slow down and clearly explain exactly what the transaction is and why it is that way.
Well,
listen, I've learned a ton.
I like how you do it now with you gather all the employees, so it's not just kind of data on the screen or a talking head. You gather all the employees together and you explain the deal carefully. So this way everybody's aware. It looks like you're talking to the employees, but you're also talking to the entire audience, and you explain the deal carefully.
Right. Exactly.
Your deals have also gotten a little simpler. Instead of saying, okay, I'm licensing this amount of profits and I'm going to have control for 1 week, you're basically buying 51% of the business for X dollars in most cases now.
Yeah, I think you'll like that season that's starting on Tuesday because the deals, they're a little simpler, but they're also different. in some cases, I'm buying the business. In other cases, I'm buying assets. In other cases, I'm a lender. And so I've had to become far more kind of flexible, because the needs of applicants or the needs of a particular business, they're not all the same. Not everybody needs an equity partner. And there are some people that I don't want to be partners with them. I don't want to be in business with them, but I may be willing to buy an asset or lend them money under certain kind of constraints. And I think that's what's nice about it, is that I'm always going to write my check. It's always going to be my money. I'm always going to have risk. That risk just takes on different forms.
So now I want to rewind a second just to kind of set the basis of how this show got started. Like, you kind of came up from, you know, I don't want to say exactly nothing, but you were working in a car dealership, right? At some point. And how did this all get started?
Well, you know what? I'll give you the Cliff Notes version. I was born in Beirut, Lebanon. I lived in an orphanage. I was adopted by an American family in Miami, Florida. My family had been in the car business for years, and while my extended family had been very successful, my immediate family, my mother and my father, they're blue collar people, and we lived a very simple life. My parents were very strict. They still are strict. My dad's very strict, very focused on work ethic, very focused on transparency. But my mother was always very encouraging to me to be aggressive. And so, I went to college at Marquette in Milwaukee. I got out of school, went down to Miami, went and worked in our family's business, decided that wasn't what I wanted to do, went and ran for office, lost, went to work for a guy by the name of Wayne Huizinga. And, had some success there at AutoNation, and then decided to get into the RV business. And all of the blessings that I have today, whatever I've achieved, is really all, stuff that's really happened in the last 10 to 15 years. And been very fortunate and very blessed. But I always tell people, nobody gave me anything. I didn't inherit a business.
What did you?
Very real and authentic.
What did you learn from Wayne? I don't know how to say his last name. Huizinga.
Wayne Huizinga.
Yeah, because clearly, he's AutoNation, waste management.
Always be straight with people. To always be straight with people. Good news, bad news, no matter what. Always be straight with people, without fail. He was just very good at it. He was just. And you didn't always like what you heard, but it was always real. It was always straight up. It was just good, solid, I would say leading by example that he provided.
And then you went from that to Camping World.
Mm-hmm. And so in 2003, I started building up this business that we know of today called Camping World. And Camping World was actually a very small business, started in Bowling Green, Kentucky in 1966, and merged it with another business, and then started rolling up other businesses. And today, what Camping World is it's a $3+ billion business with 125 locations around the country, and we do everything from put on shows to publish magazines to sell RVs to fix them to sell insurance. If you are in the RV lifestyle, there's truly it's probably the best example of vertical integration that you can think of. It's just really everything you can think of.
Have you thought about?
It's been good for me.
Have you thought about taking it public?
I've thought about it. I've people ask me all the time if they can invest in deals that I'm in, and I've thought about it, and I don't know what I want to do. Ultimately, we have the team and I have almost 6,500 employees and 4 million customers. And, as much fun as I have making the show, as much as I love buying these small businesses, as much as I love starting new ones, my Camping World business that's my child. At the risk of sounding totally corny, it is the most important thing in my life, because I feel like I built it, from the bottom up, and the people that I work with it's my family. I don't have brothers and sisters, and I don't have kids. I have Camping World.
So now,
so
you have Camping World, and then you decided to basically, I don't know if you approached CNBC or they approached you, but now you're shooting a TV show is hard work, as you know. Like, you basically took on an incredibly difficult full-time job on top of Camping World.
Yeah, it's I'm not gonna lie to you, it's tough. And
did you regret it at first?
Doing the show?
Yeah.
No, I didn't regret it. I mean, I needed to learn more about myself. I needed to learn more about other people, and I think that selfishly, the best part of the show for me is when I've learned a lot. Yes, I'm working hard at teaching people, but I've learned a lot about myself. I've learned a lot about other people and other people's ideas and different sorts of businesses. And so I feel like I'm getting a master's degree, an expensive one, by the way, but a master's degree, and I'm making new friends and I'm meeting new people and I'm expanding my horizons. But with all that being said, it comes at a cost. I don't really have, much time for myself. And it's either, making the show, and everybody forgets that when the show's over, I still have to work with everybody. These businesses are now, this isn't Shark Tank where you make a show and the episode's over, and sometimes they spend time with them and sometimes they don't.
Yeah, you're invested in a dozen different companies now.
More than a dozen, because I do lots of deals outside of the show.
Right.
And so I've filmed 24 episodes so far, and I have investments in 14 businesses just from the 24, plus another, I have an investment or a lender or an active participant in over 100 businesses. At some point, your head pops off, as you can imagine. It doesn't work forever.
I mean, after a day of shooting, do you ever feel kind of burnt out because then you're going to have problems at Camping World or whatever?
Yeah, Camping World obviously gets the priority time of my day. But, for example, yesterday I was in South Carolina. We filmed from 8 in the morning till 8:30 at night. We drove to the airport. We got on a plane. We flew to Pittsburgh. 12:45 a.m. I'm getting to my hotel room in Pittsburgh, up this morning at 8 o'clock to shoot a different episode, 3 hours of calls this morning on Camping World. And so you do, when you get to your hotel room and there's nobody around and there's nobody there to talk to, you do get reflective and you think to yourself, holy cow, this is a bit much.
So it must also be frustrating. So in season 1, episode 2, a great episode from a TV perspective, but maybe not as pleasant for you. Jacob Morris Florists. That must have been incredibly painful. You give them so I think maybe the listener should understand. You kind of, it seems to me, you write a check on the spot to these people.
I do. I do. And
is there no paperwork in place? Like, what if they
there's always paperwork that follows. But when I hand them the check, there's a handshake and there's an understanding. And so in most cases, they don't deposit the check until we have our paperwork right. They want to be, you get these really smart business people that are smart enough not to be silly about it. But I hand them a check and it's my check. And, you get these people that I think there's different types of people in the world. You've met them. Everybody that listens to your shows has met different types of people. There are the honorable people who always do the right thing, sometimes at their own peril. And there are the people who don't do the right thing. And the unfortunate part of our show is that it's not scripted. And I laugh when I say that. It's not scripted because if it was, I would never let somebody screw me. I mean, who would write a script that would make you look stupid? And so it's tough. But I will not change my formula. I will not stop shaking hands with people and saying, that's the deal that we're doing. And because if you can't trust them early on, how are you going to trust them later?
Well,
you got to find out. You got to test people.
It's an interesting thing too, because it's sort of this, technique of influence, this law of reciprocity. If you're trusting them before even the legal paperwork's done, you're kind of expecting a lot from them in return, and they're going to feel obliged to give you what you want in return in most cases.
Yes and no. There's interesting people that are in terrible peril. The minute they get that check, they have this wild case of amnesia that sets in, because the immediate burden or the immediate stress or the immediate kind of risk that they felt 20 minutes before that seems to get immediately solved. The crew on my show likes to call it the Marcus fairy dust. And the minute you give them the check, it's like the fairy dust. Sometimes, unfortunately, it happens more than I'd like. People get the money, and then all the things they agreed to, they don't want to agree to them anymore. They're like, well, I changed my mind, or I didn't like what happened, or that's not the deal we made, or whatever it may be. And it gets very tough when that happens.
So let's take Jacob Morris as an example. You wrote, I forget the size of the check. I think it was $100,000.
$100,000. Yep, $100,000.
And he cashed the check. And then did he just say, oh, no, it's not your money anymore?
Well, in that case, I spent over $100,000.
Right.
And if you recall, in a car ride, I asked him, how much money do you think I've spent here? And he said, oh, you spent way over 100, like 150.
Right.
And I said, yeah, I did that because I believe in what we're doing here. And my original estimate was a little off, so I spent more. But I'm doing that because I like what I'm seeing. And then as you saw at the end, he said, no, you didn't spend any money. It's like, well, what do you mean? You just told me like 2 days before that I did. And so the lesson that I hope, the single biggest thing that I hope happens from the show is that our youth today, the 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, high school kids, early college kids, should really, really learn that business isn't just about making money. It's a lot about character. It's a lot about integrity. It's a lot about doing what you say you're going to do without hesitation. And I'm finding that we don't have enough of that in this country. There's not enough discussion about it.
I think also in almost every one of your cases, a lot of it is taking the ego out of the business transaction as well. So a lot of, like right. Worldwide Trailers was a great example where the couple or the ex-couple, they had all these ego issues which prevented them from running the company. Like, you had no idea. Nobody had any idea where the money was.
Yeah. You find that in a lot of companies, and it's funny. The first day that I get there to most of these episodes, especially after season 1, the business owners will say to me, I want you to know I've seen every show. I know what you're going to ask me. I'm very prepared. I'm not going to look stupid. I'm going to do all these things. And then 10 minutes later, I ask them about their numbers, and they don't know them. It's like, well, like you said, you saw my show. You knew I was going to ask about the numbers. I always tell people, if you don't know your numbers, you don't know your business. 20 minutes later, I ask you about your numbers, and you didn't like, what happened? Where'd you go?
Well, it's funny because even in season 2, every single episode, I think there were ego issues. Like, again, the example of Athens Motors, the guy had the ego. He didn't want to change the name to Automatch, or the Worldwide Trailers. Right. They didn't want to be honest with you about their relationship.
Here's what's crazy. I think this is maybe the craziest thing. And, we're going to do a whole episode that's a follow-up on every business. We won't see everyone, but you'll see the good, the bad, and the ugly.
That's good.
The couple of businesses that I went to that I did not make a deal, whether I got hosed or whether I decided to walk out, in almost every case, they still communicate with me today. In the case of the trailer episode, they made all of the changes that I told them. They sent me a video. They made all the changes. They moved the business to Waycross. They put the inventory system in. Their business is doing great. And they wrote me a note. And they're like, you were right. In the case of popcorn, she made all of the changes that she needed to, and now she's asking me to come back to maybe do a deal with her now that she's made all these changes and she's willing to change. And so
would you do that?
You can have an impact. I mean, I'll go there and talk to her about it.
Sure.
But the fact that you can impact people that you do a deal with, but you could also impact people that you don't do a deal with, I think it's for me, that's very rewarding.
So describe how you look at process and product. It almost seems mathematical. Like you're taking the square footage, you're figuring out how many dollars per square foot.
You know what? I would like to tell you that it's mathematical. There's a certain math to it, but I use a lot of my instinct. I have to be honest with you. I really, really try to look at it, as logically as I can. And I look at it in the case of a consumer. What does a consumer think when they walk in? What does a consumer think when they touch this product? How do we make the process easier for them? And I try to use the most basic of logic. Sure, everything revolves around math. There's 1,000 square feet. I want to make sure that I put the product in the right place with the right layout so that I can maximize every square inch of the place. If the product isn't made right, I want to make it the right way so that I can feel proud about what I'm selling and hold my head high and put my name on it. And so it really is so simple and so dumbed down that if you look at it always from a consumer standpoint, it really isn't that difficult to fix. It's not.
Yeah, like I look at
money. It takes money, James, but it takes money. And so everything takes money. And that's the one thing, is that it definitely takes money to have change, whether you're changing the way things are built, or you're re-engineering something, or you're advertising something, or you're designing something. That's the one handicap, is that it takes money. But I'll tell people, what changes to people, process, and product could you make that don't take any money? You could clean your place. You could organize it. You could train your people. You could hire better people. You can let go of the troublemakers, right? There's things you could do that don't take money.
Like I feel like, for instance, in the Amazing Grapes one, that was a wine store where you totally transformed the store. And even though there was an expense in making the store look really nice, you could probably, a lot of those changes could have been done cheaply just by analyzing what was making money and what wasn't making money.
Right. But I have to own that business after. And so this isn't a business makeover show like a restaurant show or a bar show where they come in and they change the carpeting and they change the paint and they do just enough to make it look different. I literally have to own the business after. And so I don't want to be one of those people that get caught in doing some half-ass kind of effort. I want to be proud of it. I want the employees to be proud of it. I want the customers to want to go there. Yeah, did I probably spend more than I needed to? Of course. But I want it to be right. So I don't feel bad about it.
So this is a case where the company was in a lot of debt. The owners were sort of almost absentee owners. They were barely there, but you kind of uncovered the staff that really knew what they were doing, and you wrote a big check. It was also your most popular episode of the season.
I think it was. I think it was the most popular, and I think what viewers really liked is viewers always love physical transformation, right? They always want to see some sort of makeover. But the tweets and the Facebook posts and the notes that I got were really more around how I rallied around the employees and not the owner. A lot of people can relate to, oh, my owner doesn't come and my owner doesn't care. And, it needs to really also be about making the employees more successful. It's not always about making, somebody applies for a business, their business is failing, I put money in and they become millionaires. That's not the show that I'm making. I'm making a show that we fix the business and the employees should benefit just the same, right? They should benefit as well.
Well, who are the owners who have benefited the most now from you being an investor?
I would say that the green tea people would be right at the top, right up there at the top. I would say John and Andrew from Car Cash would definitely be up there because they were literally going out of business. I would say Pete and Allison from Sweet Pete's. They were in a very toxic situation that was very bad. So I'd say they've benefited pretty significantly. The employees at Amazing Grapes, not necessarily the owners. In case of Athens Motors, Pete Athens no longer works there. He still is my partner in that location. But he was unwilling, and you'll hear it in the follow-up, he was unwilling to, follow. If you remember, he didn't know the car business, and I brought in a general manager at the end to teach him. and he was unwilling to listen, and so I was unwilling to keep him.
It seemed like in that episode, like he had a particular passion for the cars he loved, but he wasn't really interested in being in the kind of general car business.
You mean like in the everyman business?
Right.
In the everyman business. He wanted to sell cars that, his friends drove and that he wanted to drive, and that I think it really was driven by ego. In hindsight, if you asked him now, he would say to you, yeah, I didn't do it the right way. I'm seeing what a difference this makes, and I was wrong. And I have a great relationship with him. He's really, I think, had a good dose of reality about the whole thing. But I think even more than that, he realizes that it's not as difficult as that it needed to be.
So now, obviously you're running Camping World. You've got the show coming up. So you mentioned there's going to be new things with in this next season. You're getting into clothing, which you'd never done before, I don't think, in the prior two seasons. What got you interested in that? And by the way, you always wear these very bright sweaters, so you definitely have an interest in clothing.
You know what? I really have always had an affinity for apparel. Fashion's kind of important to me, but I've never been in the business, and I've always wanted to. But it's a very lucrative business, and it's a very dangerous business. And so I wanted to partner with people that I felt had the right infrastructure. And so you'll see that in episode 1, that the family that I'm working with, a French family, had the right infrastructure and had the right ideas, but just got off track. And so big product transformation, maybe the biggest I've had, because I literally got rid of everything they had, and a big store transformation. And so it's and big people transformation. And so it's probably one of my favorites. I think people will really like it. The one that's going to air this coming Tuesday, and it's a nice platform for other things to come. And, it's funny, food can't be everything, clothing can't be everything, cars can't be everything. But I also like to invest in businesses that are relatable and that, they don't come and go with the economy. Everybody's going to need to drive a car, and they're always going to need to eat. They're always going to need to get their hair cut, and they're always going to need to wear clothes. And so if you think about it that way, it keeps it much simpler.
Well, it's interesting also because you get into these businesses that are not economy dependent, but you also get into businesses that, because of their problems, they essentially can be valued at zero. So you could write your deal. So your deal basically is to keep everybody incentivized, but also to put in enough money where you have skin in the game, but it's enough that they can make the transformation they need to make.
Right. In most cases, the money that I put in either physically transforms the place, it keeps the bank from taking the business, or it puts cash in the bank. It's really essentially why money has to go in. And my offer is usually based on what I think the business actually needs to get out of the woods. So that's always the key. And, sometimes I end up spending more than my original negotiated offer. And people ask me all the time, if you end up spending more, do you recut the deal? Do you go back and renegotiate? And my answer is no, I don't, because I had my chance to make the deal and I shook somebody else's hand. And if I miscalculated it or I decided to do more, why is that their fault?
Well, also
it's not great, but it is what it is.
But I think also in many of these cases, the deals are so great for you and for them. I mean, it's a win-win that if the company does well and meets the projections you want, and then it's valued just on a multiple of earnings, I think in every single case, you're going to make an enormous amount of money.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that's most of the case. Like in the case of Key Lime, I would say that's been my most expensive, worst return deal, because I after the deal, a number of things came out of the woodworks that made the deal far more expensive, and so my return got really bad really fast. And that's life, and so the only way I can recoup that, the only way I can leverage that is I felt like when I did Crumbs, that was my one shot at kind of having a chance to get some of it back.
I see. So Crumbs absorbed it now. Like, is that how you restructure it? Or?
Well, Crumbs gives me the platform to take the pie and the pie bars and the other products and do something with it. It really gives it an opportunity.
It's really great when you have the leverage of multiple companies to kind of do these deals. Again, like how you brought EcoMe into Camping World and so on.
Yeah, it makes a difference. It makes a difference. But you have to also be careful because you don't ever want to force things into businesses that don't belong. You don't want to be, just because you can doesn't mean you should. I'm not going to start selling, clothes at a candy store. You're not going to sell candy at a car dealership. And so you just have to govern yourself appropriately that as you start collecting a holding company of businesses, that integration is okay when it really makes sense, but it doesn't always make sense. It doesn't always work.
So you get something like 40,000 requests for help from companies, I don't know, per month, or there's some outrageous number of emails you get.
Had about 40,000. Yes, since we started the show, we've had about 40,000 applications, and obviously the network is very involved in that process and very helpful. And we do background checks on people, and it's got to be something that I'm interested in, or it's got to be a business that I think a viewer could relate to, or something that I want to learn. And sometimes I get into businesses that I know nothing about, and it's a challenge for me to see, okay, you keep saying your 3 Ps work in every business. Prove it to me. I'm literally talking to myself, right? Prove it to me that it works. And so I like to put that theory to the test because you want to have somewhat of a bulletproof theory if people, start challenging you on it. And so, so far it hasn't failed, but I do realize that I sometimes try too hard to fix the people, and sometimes people they're just not fixable.
Well, before you even know the people, though, what are the basic metrics you use to decide, okay, I'm going to try to make a deal in this business?
Well, I usually go into every business thinking I'm going to make a deal, right? I wouldn't go if I didn't think I wanted to make a deal.
But
right?
even deciding to go, like what makes you decide to visit? Like what do you see that makes you decide to visit?
The product has to be relatable, and I have to believe to a certain degree that I can extract some scalability out of it. I can do something with it. I could launch a new product. I could take one of their existing products. I can open up multiple locations. If I don't feel like I can get some scale out of it, I usually don't go. But the caveat to that is if I really, really love the people. And I see, we do a little Skype video with them before I go. And if I love the story, sometimes story and heart trumps economics for me. I'll go do a deal because I just like them. Doesn't mean it's going to be a bad business deal. It will always be a good business deal. But just because I can't scale it isn't an absolute that I won't go do it. It's not an absolute. But it's typically the rule that if you look at whether it's cars or ice cream and manufacturing or distribution or candy or clothing or whatever it may be, there's a scalability to it. So there's one this coming season that isn't really. People would argue that it's scalable. They would want me to scale it, but it's so fantastic and it's so unique that it just needs to be what it is and nothing more.
What do they do?
They're in the barbecue business, and they're in the barbecue business in a little town in South Carolina. They're open 3 days a week for 4 hours a day, and they do almost $2 million a year.
Wow. And why did they need you? Like, what was the problem that was happening?
James, you have to watch the show. I didn't tell you that. I have to watch it. I didn't tell you.
No, now you've got me all hyped up.
We're going to probably air that the week of Thanksgiving because it's just got a lot of heart and a lot of love and a lot of family in it. And, every episode doesn't have to have crazy people. It just doesn't. It gets exhausting for me, too. Like, I almost say to myself, like, how did we not know these people were going to be nuts before we came here? How did we not know that? Sometimes you just don't know it until you get there.
Well, it's funny because obviously it's edited after you're there and after you know what's going to happen. And so it's sort of like in retrospect, the viewer could see, oh, that guy at Jacob Morris was going to do this. But you really had no clue what was going to happen at the very beginning, that he was going to kind of just hold on to the money.
But at the very beginning of the episode, you didn't know either.
Yeah, that's true. Although, the way they edit it, you kind of see like sly looks out of them, or, like on the Jacob Morris one, you emphasize we shook our hands, right? Like that's kind of the only time you've done that.
Ironically enough, I said something to him about it. And if you remember, I said to his mom, do I have your word? And she said, yes. And he hesitated.
Right.
He hesitated. And I've never had anybody hesitate. And so that's why I said, once I shook his hand, I wanted to remind him, honest to gosh, I would have never started spending money. I would have never started doing anything if I thought he would have done that. And so when the viewer saw him tell me that he wasn't going to honor the deal, it was exactly the time that I found out, and you saw how upset I got. I was like, what?
Yeah, I thought you were going to hit him.
I thought I was going to hit him too. I really did. I really thought I was going to hit him.
We were very upset in my house.
Yeah, because you were like, how could that guy do that? But listen, it's good for kids. There's all sorts of people in the world, right? All sorts of people. And I think you still have to trust everybody. You have to hope for the best and plan for the worst.
So you've done 3 seasons. I don't know, maybe you've shot already part of a 4th season. How long is this going to go on? Because you're a busy guy. You've got to move on with your life at some point.
So James, one of the things that people don't realize is that the space between filming to airing is very short. The show that's going to air on Tuesday night, is coming Tuesday night, October 14th, actually finished filming October 2nd.
Wow.
And the show that I'm filming in Pittsburgh right now, which reminds me they're waiting for me, that show will air like in November. And so, people always ask me, how's it going? I'm like, it's good. I was just there, and so it's the follow-ups are more exciting for me than they are for anybody, because it takes time for these things to develop. It takes time for personalities to come out and the good, the bad, and the ugly to finally show up.
Right,
right away.
It's hard to kind of film a whole episode because these could be years-long works in progress.
Well, that's why the follow-ups really matter, right? Because they are all works in progress. We spend 9 days filming. You figure it's almost 60 hours of footage, and what you get as a viewer is 44 minutes.
And right now, what is your best? Which company was the best return, or have you exited any of the companies yet?
EcoMe is gone. I just couldn't work with them at all, and so I ended up selling my share to a third party, and so that business is gone. Car Cash has been fantastic. I think at the end of the day, so far in the first 2 seasons, ones that you have not seen, I would say that Automatch and Green Tea are the multi-million-dollar high five winners. They're the big ones so far.
Excellent. Well, Marcus, I know you're busy. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. I highly recommend everybody watch the shows to see you in action as you fix these businesses, whether you're an entrepreneur, an employee, a kid, a businessman, anyone. They're really well done TV shows. There's a lot of drama. There's the arc of the hero in each episode.
Well, what I ask for is that, I always tell people, I know that your kids are supposed to be in bed early. Either DVR it or let them watch it, because it's great for education. And I know that a lot of high school teachers, tons of them, and college professors are now showing the episodes in their class. And there's nothing more flattering than having, an educator use your work as part of a syllabus. So I encourage people, I hope they watch it, but I really strongly encourage people to have their kids watch it.
Well, good luck with this season, and look, I hope you find time for a personal life at some point in this, because you've got to do stuff other than business every now and then.
Exactly. Well, I'll talk to you soon. Thanks so much.
Okay. Thanks, Marcus. Bye.
Bye-bye.
For more from James, check out the James Altucher Show on the Stansberry Radio Network at stansberryradio.com and get yourself on the free insiders list today.
Taking a tour of where your finances can go? Good plan. See how Northwestern Mutual's approach to financial planning is designed for your goals with our interactive tour. Try it today at northwesternmutual.com/tour. The Northwestern Mutual Life Insurance Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin.